right, good afternoon, everybody. Melissa, if we can get me shared here. How we doing, everybody? So welcome to the TRC webinar. We've been receiving so many questions about the tariff situation that exists. And as an importer and a supplier, an important partner for everybody that's on this call, we've been doing our due diligence, a lot of homework, and making sure we know all the facts so that we can eliminate all the confusion, because where there's confusion, there's failure. So today, our goal, our intention of this webinar is, number one, is to present the facts to everybody here so that you have confidence in the information, because it could be a little bit confusing. So much happens so fast. Number two, also, this particular webinar, the deck that I'm going to be presenting to you, everybody that registered for this webinar will be receiving an emailed copy of it. And what's valuable about that, not just simply having the information, but there's links to the resources of the data that we're sharing with you, so that if you'd like to just reconcile the information with what we're providing you with the sources, you'll have ability to link to the specific executive orders that specify the different tariff implications that we are sharing with you here today. Also, I'm going to share with you some developing risks that we see in the supply chain looking forward, so that you guys can be anticipating that and being proactive instead of being reactive. And of course, we're going to answer any questions that you guys have at the end. So I'll leave plenty of time, and I'll make sure that this doesn't end until we answer all the questions that you guys have. So during the course of this, if you have a question, you could put it in the chat. You could raise your virtual hand, and Melissa here, who's working with me, is my co-host today. We're going to make sure that we answer your questions. A little bit about me: I'm Steve Lagomarsino. I'm the president of TRC Electronics, and I've been in the electronics industry since 1998. I've been working with TRC Electronics for over 25 years, and as many of you know, our specialty as an electronic distributor is power conversion components. So our mission is to supply you guys with the power to succeed. And whether that means providing you with incredible products and services, or giving you the information that you need so that you can run a successful business or run a successful engineering and purchasing department, we're going to be able to help you guys out. So we're going to get this going here. Melissa, if you could share the deck, I'm going to walk you guys through it. And once again, I encourage you guys to put any questions in the chat or raise your virtual hand, and we'll make sure we get them, and we will definitely address them at the end. So next slide, Melissa. Okay, I thought I'd start off with the facts of where we are right now. And guys, this is all my information I'm providing you was up to date as of yesterday. If something happened today, I can't speak for it. I checked the news. It looked like nothing really big happened that impacted any of us. But right now, and I'm focusing primarily on power conversion components, but this really applies to most electronic components with some exceptions where there were some exclusions carved out. But power conversion components, AC/DC power supplies, LED drivers, DC/AC inverters, we're providing those solutions to you guys. If it's manufactured in China currently, the import tariff on that product is 170%, and I'm going to demonstrate to you how it came at 170%. And I know in the news we're hearing 145%. 145%, but it's actually 170. And the reason is there's three components of that. It's the Section 301 tariff that existed before President Trump was reelected, which was 25%. You have the IEPA and also the reciprocal tariff. Now, if we're purchasing anything and importing it and it was manufactured in Mexico or Canada, it's 25%. That's the IEPA. And then also the remaining countries are presently 10%. That's a reciprocal tariff. There was a 90-day pause on the actual higher tariff that the president announced on Liberation Day. That pause is until 12:01 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time on July 9th, 2025. If we go to the next slide, Melissa. Okay, so how do we arrive at this? Because this is like, hey, there's like a lot of tariffs were stacked. So many of us are aware, July 2018, we had the Section 301 tariffs. the USTR had the China Section 301 tariff actions, and that's 25%. That was on almost all electronic components coming from China. That was just on China products. Then in February 1st of this year, we implemented a 10% additional IEPA tariff on China products and also a 10% on Canada and Mexico. That brought our China tariffs up to a total of 35%. We have a link to the executive order here. Then on March 3rd, 2025, there was an additional 10% IEPA tariff on China products, and that's where we imposed a 25% tariff on Canada and Mexico. What that brought our China tariff up to was 45%. Then on April 2nd, Liberation Day, we had a 34% reciprocal tariff added to all the existing tariffs for China, as well as varying other tariffs on other countries. The president had that big list of all the different tariffs on other countries. At that moment, on April 2nd, that brought our total China import tariff to 79%. We go to the next slide. Then on April 7th, the U.S. retaliated in response to China's retaliatory tariffs by increasing the reciprocal tariff an additional 50%. So at that moment, that brought our total China import tariff to 129%. Then on April 9th, President Trump did a 90-day temporary 10% tariff on all countries, but he didn't put a pause on Canada, China, and Mexico. He also, on that day, increased the China reciprocal tariff from 84% to 125%. That brought our total China import tariff effective April 9th to 170%. So whoever the importer of record is, whether if that product is manufactured in China, it doesn't matter which country it's coming from. If we're trying to transship it from like China to Vietnam and the US, it doesn't matter, because on the documents, it's the country of origin. Whoever the importer of record is going to pay that tariff. So when TRC Electronics imports $2 million of power supplies that are manufactured in China, the import tariff right now would be $3.4 million in addition to the $2 million worth the cost of those goods. Next slide, Melissa. Okay, HTS codes. So in the presentation here, which you guys are going to get a copy of, we have the harmonized tariff schedule of the United States. The tariff HTS codes for power supplies. This is the page from Chapter 85 of the HTS of the HTS codes. This booklet is greater than 4,000 pages if you want to figure out your HTS codes of the products imported. But there's a link to the website here. It's really nice. You just put the product in there and you're going to be able to find the HTS codes pretty efficiently. But when we look at what we're importing and the power conversion components, this is where the HTS codes apply for the products that we are importing into the United States and ultimately delivering to all the amazing clients that are on this call here today. Now, that's where we are right now, and this is something that is really evolving right now and beginning to develop. And while what's very visible to all of us is the risk of the tariffs and the burden, the financial burden of the tariffs and the challenges that presents to all of us, because as we can all agree, when we are looking at like over 100% increase in our cost of goods sold, that's not something that you could just absorb. There's no other. We'll all go out of business if we eat that. Not many of us work at that kind of margins. We've got to pass that along. So we're going to be obviously passing that along to ultimately the end consumer. It's going to go through the supply chain and pass through, and they're ultimately going to pay a higher price for goods. That seems to be pretty transparent, but what is developing that we all should be aware of is the supply chain disruption risks that are really kind of starting to ferment here. First, what we have happening is there's just a severe drop in cargo shipments. So they plummeted by like 60% since these higher tariffs have really come into effect over the last month. Freight industry, the logistics of the carriers are cutting capacity. So there's about 80 sailings were canceled just in April alone. which is that number is significant because it's actually 60% higher than during the COVID pandemic. So we know how, like, we know what we went through with COVID, where we dropped and all of a sudden we bounced back, and it was this big supply chain disruption because we went from off to on again. Well, this is more drastic than then. So this is going to, and a reason that's important to know is because it's going to make the recovery harder and much slower. So there's potential for these disruptions. We should expect significant supply chain bottlenecks and material shortages, and which would obviously result in some operational slowdown similar to that pandemic. So knowing what we went through, we've had that experience already. Many of us have gone through that experience, and we learned, and we can take the wisdom and knowledge of what we learned through there and be more proactive versus being reactive, because this is the second time a similar situation is going to happen. Just one is health induced. This one's more like is self-inflicted from the policies that we're creating here in the government. So restarting trade is going to be problematic. The freight capacity was cut, and when we have a surge in orders, it's going to overwhelm the shipping networks. And when can we get a surge in orders? Well, if the current situation prolongs and all of a sudden we get a trade deal with China and there's resolution, you're going to see everybody want to order fast. Like we've been some of us are holding back a little bit to see how it works out. You're going to see a surge in orders, and all of a sudden they're going to open up everything again. And now you're going to have this situation where they're not prepared because the supply chain is not made for stop and go. It's not that easy to turn on and turn off. So we're not really equipped for that. And when I say we, I mean the carriers. So long-term risk, it's riskier than COVID. We know that this is going to rebound at some point. This situation is unsustainable right now. We know that that's going to work out one way or another because China and US have way too much to lose right now. Now, we're at 170% tariff right now. Does that mean we're going to be back to 25%? No, I don't believe so. I think it's going to be somewhere in between there. And how long it takes between now and that point where we get to there, the longer it takes, the worse that this situation is going to be with the supply chain rebound and the disruptions that it's ultimately going to cause. So we've got to be able to weigh the balance of like, hey, the risk here is if we order now, we're paying the tariff. But if we wait too long, we could be in a supply chain issue. So it's about balancing that and making some real good calculations to keep our operations going and our production lines moving along here. Melissa, if you can, I see there's a couple questions here. If you could stop sharing just for a second. Okay, Melissa, if you can help me out here, are you seeing cargo shipments from other countries plummeting also? What is the risk of ducks? Okay, so we are not seeing it like that in other countries because right now, what's happening in other countries, we only have the 10% and there's negotiations. And some countries we feel more optimistic about the negotiations than others. And, it's all like the little pieces and bits of information that we're getting. From what I understand, the country that look like we have the first opportunity to make a trade deal is going to be India, because that seems to be the country that they were ahead of this and they were proactive. So that's one of the countries. Now, here's the other thing. Nobody knows how all these other trade deals are going to shake out with these other countries. So we don't know if it's going to be favorable trade deal or unfavorable. So it almost freezes everybody to make a move because a lot of our factories are looking to transition into other countries, but there's some hesitation because we don't want to be moving from, like, say, bringing production lines from China, go to Vietnam, and also we find out Vietnam's 100% tariff, and now you're paying more with the Vietnam tariff than you would with the China tariff. So there's a lot of complications here. Can we get, Melissa, help me out with questions here in the chat, okay?
For sure. We've got Robert Cummings. What is your take on bonded warehouses?
Well, I can tell you this. So right now, what we have right now, I can't speak much about bonded warehouses, but what TRC Electronics did is we're a foreign trade zone. So a foreign trade zone, the difference here with a foreign trade zone in the US, previously, before the tariffs went up, the administrative burden, administrative financial costs to do it when it was 25% really didn't make a lot of sense for us. But when the president was elected and we saw this risk happening, we went through the process of becoming a foreign trade zone. And our warehouse, effective about 3 weeks ago, is a foreign trade zone. And all that means is that when the product comes into our warehouse, we actually don't pay the government the tariff until we actually ship it out of our warehouse to you, the customers. So for us, that allows us to have the cash flow health that we need in our organization to be able to hold that inventory, because some of our inventory we might hold for a year or two, and we don't want to be paying that tariff a year or two before we actually pass the cost of the tariff along to the customer. So as I mentioned earlier, that imagine you have a $2 million shipment coming into your warehouse from China, and you have to pay the 3.4 million as soon as it arrives, versus you don't pay the 3.4 million until you gradually, over the course of like 12 or 24 months, ship the product to the clients.
Stephen, there's a direct follow-up question to that. Are there risks from buying from power supply distributors that do not have foreign trade zones?
Yeah, the risk, if you do not have a foreign trade zone and you're a power supply distributor, I don't see how you survive this, because the cash flow burden on your organization will be so tremendous. And then what those distributors are going to do is they're probably going to be asking for you, they're not financially healthy and strong. And what they're going to be asking from the clients to be able to cover for that is probably not going to be very competitive and favorable in the market, versus a distributor who like, hey, we're not paying that tariff until we actually ship it to you and then actually bill you the tariff. So that would be, we have our executive team discuss this. After this happened, we said, if we didn't do the foreign trade zone, we don't see how we could deliver at a high level to our clients. It would have been impossible.
Another question here is if we can offer a list of factory locations specifically on the Meanwell parts, because they're aware of APVs, LPVs, and not being made in China.
Yeah, yes, we can do that. We can definitely do that. We can make a resource on our website and put it on a blog. And I'll in the meantime, I'll also add that one change we made to our website, on every item page, when you go to a particular item on our website, under the specifications, you'll see the known country of origin. Now we're specifying it, as well as when you're searching in the collections, if you're looking in a product category and you're filtering through our filters, one of the filters on the left-hand side now is known country of origin, so that you can make your decisions also based on the country that the product is actually manufactured.
And while we're still on the topic there of China, are there any parts that don't have tariff coming from China?
Not power conversion components, no. They all have tariffs.
And
right now, we have one manufacturer of power supplies that's manufactured in the United States. It's Integrated Power Designs, IPD. You can find it on our website. Other than that manufacturer, there's some type of tariff on all the products right now, whether it's just simply a 10% or all the way up to the 170% for the China products. And what we do is we pass through the cost of the tariffs, what we pay, through to the customers. You're not paying 170% of the resale price that you're buying from a distributor like TRC Electronics. Is going to be a smaller factor, because we're passing through the cost, our actual expense. It really, at the end of the day, it's a tax. It ends up being, it's at the end of the day, this is becoming a national sales tax if this were to persist, because nationally, the end products will all cost more, because it's going to come through that way.
Speaking of factories, and as well as China, are we seeing any Chinese factories moving to countries? You touched a little bit on this before, like the Philippines.
Yes. So there are factories. So we have, well, one of the things we did here in the organization, we made sure over the past like 5 years that we had good diversity of products being manufactured in different countries between the different suppliers of power supplies that we have. There are certain types of products that there are no other options from other than China, because like they just kept them in China because it was so price competitive that we needed to keep it in China. But broadly speaking, generally, we've got pretty good options. Now, for the current situation where some of the manufacturers have too much in China, or they want to minimize their China manufacturing footprint, they are working through plans right now. They're just waiting for like this all to kind of like greater clarity of what the landscape's going to be moving forward. But like, so for one of our partners, meanwhile, they have manufacturing facilities. They have 2 in China, they have 1 in Philippines, 1 in Taiwan, and they also have manufacturing capability in India. And what they're doing right now is they had a plan, but now they're putting the pieces together of like what they can transition out of China for the US market. They already had some stuff in Philippines just for us. Now they're looking to move more of that. They have been moving some of that already. Then they're also making plans to move manufacturing to India. They just need to get confidence in like what the deals are going to be in these other countries, so they don't make this big investment and then find out that, wow, we're not in a competitive situation. This is not really helping the end client at the end of the day. Do you anticipate Taiwan being able to meet TRC's product needs? Taiwan alone won't be the solution. So Taiwan, it's expensive to manufacture there. A lot of the manufacturers in Taipei or right outside of Taipei City, and real estate is really expensive there. You don't have a lot of manufacturing capability. It's going to be able to take some of it, but Taiwan's not going to be the answer. The answer is going to be in countries like Vietnam, as long as Vietnam cooperates with the US and there's a good trade deal. But Philippines, India, you're going to see Thailand, you're going to see all these other countries. What could be good at the end of the day is that there's more diversity and it's more globally spread around, and we're not depending just simply on China to such a degree. Like right now, probably 60% of the product that we bring into the country is China manufactured. And one thing I do know for sure is you're going to see, no matter how this shakes out over the next couple months, I predict you'll see less dependency on China, because just our governments are just, that we're really, this is, to me, this is an economic war. We're fighting a war with China. We're just doing it economically instead of we're doing it militarily. And this is how it's being battled out, because we're not really friends anymore. Like, we've got conflicting interests with China and the US. The governments, they're at odds with one another. And this is just the way it's being fought right now.
I have another direct question here regarding drawback and shipping from the United States to Canada. So if I buy from TRC as my distributor and I ship product to Canada, will I be able to participate in the duty drawback program? Because my understanding is that I cannot because I'm not buying direct.
So the drawback, so there's new limitations with the drawback. And is Lisa, I'm going to unmute Melissa. If you unmute Lisa, because Lisa Tran, Senior Director of Operations here, has been really involved in all of this. Lisa, what's the change now in drawback, the difference now versus say last year?
Yeah, so with the drawback, there are specific tariffs where you can get the drawback, and other ones where you're limited. So it's my understanding that the Section 301 and the reciprocal do qualify for the drawback. The IEPA does not. All
right. So for the China situation, then the IEPA is 20%, and then everything of the 170%. So that 20% would not be eligible for drawback, but the 150% would be eligible for drawback. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So that's the deal with drawback. For whatever reason, they made that IEPA component of it not eligible for drawback. Thank you, Lisa. Does that answer that question? Did we get you good there? I'm making sure that. Okay, Melissa, what else we have in the chat here? And also, guys, anybody that wants to raise their virtual hand, I'm here to answer your questions.
All right, love this question coming up here from Blaine. Since the tariff is based on the transaction value, how is TRC remaining transparent on the actual cost so customers can plan for the tariffs more closely?
Yeah, all right, great. I love that question. So when we import our products, we're importing like, big like containers at a time. Like it's a few containers at a time with a lot of product there. We can't show you like a whole entire like document of everything that came in, but what we are doing is we at the batch level know, hey, we paid the import tariff for 25% on this, 45% on this, 170% on this. We're being transparent with like, hey, that inventory that we're selling to you is this tariff, so that we're not charging someone 170% tariff when we really paid 25%. We've been working with the clients there, and we have a formula that's consistent that we use with the tariffs, and we're being transparent with how we're calculating that tariff, so that that, hey, listen, if I'm buying this value item, this is what the formula of the tariff, we could share that with you. But to show you guys the import documentation, it's really challenging. Just know that like we are 100% transparent with everything we do here, and we know that if it's in our benefit to minimize the financial impact for you on this, because if the greater this financial burden is for you, the less successful you're going to be, the less product you're going to sell to your customers, the less competitive you're going to be in the market. So we've got to do everything we can to minimize this impact so that you guys can be more successful in the market. Melissa, I want to show them before I'll keep asking questions. Can you show that last slide here, because this is really important, and I want to put a link in the chat here, because if anybody is using products right now, and it's manufactured from China, whether it's from TRC Electronics or it's from anybody else, there's a QR code here. I would highly recommend for you to scan this and request a free power supply assessment. Hey, there's just no commitment. I put the link in the chat here. Our team will get back to you right away and look at what you're using, let you know, hey, you have options that are going to be competitive that are not manufactured in China, or maybe there are no options right now, but we could put you on a list for when things start moving, and we'll notify you as soon as there is. And if there is an option or options, we'll give you what they are, and even let you know what countries they're manufactured in, and like what the potential risks are, so that you can have some confidence in what you do moving forward. Unless you could stop sharing here for a second. And not only that, but also help you guys work with you and make sure that you're making the right commitments in the right increments, so you're not over ordering or under ordering, and you're minimizing the risk that exists here right now. Because there's a balance between, I need to get product, but I don't want to overbuy, because if the tariffs are decreased, versus, well, if I underbuy and I'm too conservative, then I could be in a bind when these supply chain disruptions ultimately happen, because we're watching this very carefully, and we're going to time it with our inventory, but we're also going to time it with our communication with you, the clients. We speak a lot to our clients, and we keep in touch with them. And I'm not talking about just email. I'm talking about getting on the phone and having conversations with you to make sure that we're anticipating this and being proactive and not reacting, because there's no reason for us to be reactive right now and not be able to minimize the impact of the supply chain disruptions, because we went through this before, and we can definitely learn from that. Hey guys, has this been helpful for you? Like the information, if you could put a yes in the chat, let me know if this has been helpful, because we get so many questions from this, and as this goes on, we'd be more than happy to, as this evolves, we get the next update and change, we could do another webinar and just keep everybody in tune with what the current situation is, or like when we see things developing and we can start seeing things happening. All right, great. Do we have all the questions answered? Does anyone, any last questions before we wrap? I gave a half hour, but I could be on this all day. Okay, here.
There's
What
one
was the
here
question?
from Devin. It sounds like the tariffs will be passed on based on the percentage applicable at time of sale, based on being in a federal trade zone. We'll correct
Yeah,
that.
foreign trade zone. Okay. the way it works, the tariff is determined at the time it loads the vessel. So whatever the tariff is at the time the product loads the vessel in China, say for instance, say it goes on a vessel today in China, it's 170%. It goes on the ocean, gets here like 4 weeks later, and I ship that product in another couple months. The tariff is 170% because when it loaded the vessel, it was 170%. The benefit of the foreign trade zone is that we don't pay that tariff until we actually ship it out of our foreign trade zone to the customer. And that's something in the past, in a foreign trade zone, you could elect to have product come in. I'm going to try not to get too confusing. I'll simplify this. You could have it come in privileged or non-privileged. Privileged meant that the tariff was determined at the time it loaded the vessel. Non-privileged meant that the tariff was determined at the time it left your warehouse. But one of the executive orders the president executed here, he said that there is no option for non-privileged. It has to come in privileged now in our foreign trade zone. So we don't even have the option to bring it in non-privileged. Well, I could say this, guys, there's definitely wherever there's a challenge and there's quote problems, there's opportunities. It's just up to us to find the opportunities here to work through this. And we know that we've been through all these disruptions in our industry, and it always gets better. All right, very good. Any other questions?
No, I just put the link back in the chat there. If anybody has additional questions or questions after this related to the tariffs or China power risk, please fill out that form and we'd be happy to get that information over to you.
All right, very good, guys. Look for the email. We'll be sending you an email with that link, but also this presentation, and you'll have the links on that presentation so you can do your you can look at those sources, and that'll be great to share with your team if anyone's asking. And also, if any of your clients are asking about it, you'll be able to. It's a good resource for you to be able to share with them as well. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us on this beautiful Tuesday in end of April. Everybody have an amazing day, and we appreciate for all of you joining us. Have an amazing rest of the week.